Thom Hartman here on the news. You need to know this. Workers of the world are uniting in a global day of action to commemorate International Workers' Day. In hundreds of cities across America and around the world, in London, Barcelona, Toronto, Kuala Lumpur, and Sydney, there are calls for a general strike with no working, no shopping, and no banking. The Occupy movement here in the United States is branding it as a day without the 99%. In response, Wall Street banks are coordinating with each other and with police to monitor today's marches and rallies around New York City. While the banks haven't disclosed exactly how they plan to deal with the protests, one security advisor compared Occupy demonstrators to wolves. Since the Occupy movement began last year, more than 2,100 demonstrators have been arrested just in New York City, but not one single bankster has been convicted of a crime on Wall Street. That's why today is so important, as working people around the world fight back against abuses of power and the corporate takeover of our democracy and our economy. Young workers are screwed. In today's rallies and marches, you'll notice a majority of those taking part in the action are young people. That's because they've figured out that Reaganomic austerity policies they're pushing back against are harming them the most. According to a new study by the International Labor Organization, trickle-down austerity measures like the ones being pushed in Europe and by Republicans here in the United States disproportionately hit young workers the hardest. In austerity-racked Ireland, a third of young workers are now unemployed. And in austerity-hit Spain, more than half of all workers under the age of 25 are unemployed. And here in the United States, where Republicans have forced the president's hand on budget cuts, including cuts to Pell Grant programs, half of our nation's recent college graduates are out of work or underemployed. If young people can't find work out of college, then a whole generation of entrepreneurs, teachers, and engineers could be lost. In the best of the rest of the news, 5 men were arrested in Ohio this morning after they attempted to blow up a bridge near Cleveland. On Monday, the men planted what they thought were C4 explosives on the bridge. They were actually fake devices sold to them by undercover FBI employees. Authorities say the public was never in any danger, and it's very likely that this story will disappear from the news cycle quickly, since all 5 guys arrested were white guys and not dark-skinned men or Muslims. In fact, expect the news media to not even refer to those charged as suspected terrorists. ALEC members are dropping like flies. More than a dozen corporate members have dropped their membership since April, and now mostly Democratic state lawmakers are fleeing ALEC as well. Since last week, 28 legislators canceled their ALEC memberships, including 4 Nebraska legislators just yesterday. One Nebraska state senator, Heath Mello, commented on ALEC, saying, "They've become very extreme on a lot of issues. I don't want to be used as a political pawn." Very extreme is an understatement. ALEC is dismantling our democracy with voter ID laws, poisoning our air and water with anti-EPA laws, and increasing murders around the country with shoot-first laws. Let's keep up the pressure on the Koch brother-funded corporatocracy. It looks like the highly controversial Internet Security Bill known as CISPA, which passed out of the Republican House of Representatives last week, might be another example of bought and paid-for legislation. The Center for Responsive Politics uncovered that CISPA's chief sponsor, Republican Representative Mike Rogers from Michigan, has received $175,000 from corporations that support CISPA and have lobbied for the law. So even though CISPA is a radical attack on your online privacy, Congressman Rogers doesn't care because he needs the money. In any other country, this would be called bribery. But in America, thanks to the Supreme Court, Republicans and corporations call it free speech. Speaking of bribery, Tea Party freshmen in Congress are cozying up to the very same banks, the big banks that they railed against to win their elections in 2010. Despite running on platforms of outrage about the bank bailout, the 10 freshman Republicans in the House Financial Services Committee are now happily accepting campaign donations from those very same bailed-out banks. Looking at campaign finance disclosure records, these Tea Partiers have taken nearly $170,000 from PACs connected to big banks like J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Goldman Sachs. And those investments look to be worthwhile as Republicans on the committee work to defund key Wall Street reforms and block the Volcker firewall, which would prevent banks from gambling with your deposit money. As the Republican chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, Spencer Baucus, blurted out, the regulators are there to serve the banks. Right. A report released by the British Parliament today declared that media mogul Rupert Murdoch is unfit to lead his own company. British lawmakers arrived at this conclusion following Murdoch's recent testimony and unbelievable ignorance over the phone hacking scandal that's rocked the UK media. Murdoch's rogue company, News Corp, owns a slew of tabloids, newspapers, and TV stations around the world, including Fox So-Called News here in the United States. And finally, multimillionaire Congressman Paul Ryan, author of one of the most radical hard-right budgets to ever pass the House of Representatives, has a little Ayn Rand problem on his hands. After catching flack from the Catholic bishops who said his budget is more in line with his favorite philosopher Ayn Rand than with Jesus Christ, millionaire Congressman Paul Ryan has tried to distance himself from earlier remarks he's made supporting Ayn Rand. But the Ayn Rand think tank, the Atlas Society, is applauding the Ryan budget as being, quote, very much in line with the direction that we stand for and would like to see the government go, end quote. The Atlas Society also released a 2005 speech by Paul Ryan, in which Ryan brags that the one person who most inspired him to seize power over our government was Ayn Rand. Now that explains a lot. And that's the way it is today, Tuesday, May 1st, 2012. I'm Thom Hartman on the news.